that said, ladies first, Crystal, would you like to introduce yourself?
I knew you were gonna pick on me. Hi guys, I am Crystal Phillips. I hail from the wonderful Caribbean island of Trinidad and Tobago. I am an advocate for agriculture. Clearly, I'm here today. We are working towards different ways to help the community when it comes to food security. What we do, I represent, yes, I'm the owner of your equipment suppliers. What we do is we try to help persons in the micro and small agricultural space in terms of equipping them with machinery to automate their processes. And a lot of what everybody else was saying today, basically in regards to trying to produce cost-effective equipment that could be repaired in the regions that we're servicing. That has been a challenge. We have been trying to adopt solar practices, which has been a different type of beast. Hopefully I can meet someone here who has overcome that challenge or who has some type of direction or could put me closer to the goal that I'm trying to accomplish. And I'm enjoying the conversation so far. And next person.
Thank you, Crystal. Dr. Diallo, can you introduce yourself and your work there in Senegal?
Hello again, everybody. My name is Amadou Uri Diallo. I'm a researcher in the National Institute of Agricultural Research in Senegal, named ISRA, and I'm based in Thiès. The center in Thiès is a center who had its mandate to develop innovation on 6 species, such as millet, sorghum, and fonio. Then cowpea, groundnut, and then sesame. So these are the 6 speculation we're working with. And we have the regional mandate also to develop technology. Each technology we develop have to be shared in West and Central Africa, because we are in the tutelage of CORAF. I don't know if you heard about CORAF. It's an entity who managing all the research around agricultural research in this area of Central and West Africa. So my work, I'm a biochemist, so interested in everything related to nutrition. So now in Senegal, we talking a lot about food sovereignty. So while achieving that, sorghum and millet have to play their role, because sorghum and millet is cultural for us. We using it as the grain is used for food, for human food. So in this panel, I'll try to share the constant we have throughout all the process, from consumption to production. So I'm ready to have this panel and then share my thought.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Diallo. Levi Chikombe, are you on? Levi? Well, I tell you what, Marcelo, would you like to introduce yourself? And I will message Levi and see if he's available. The floor is yours, Marcelo.
Marcelo?
Right. Sorry, there's Levi. Never mind. I saw Levi. Are you ready, Levi? Levi, are you there? You're muted and we can't see you.
Lucas?
Yeah, go ahead, Marcelo. Go ahead.
Lucas?
Olá, estou aqui, Marcelo.
Então vamos lá. Nate, qual o feedback que você possui com os produtores que cultivam sorgo nos diversos países, não só nos Estados Unidos, mas também em outros países? Qual é esse feedback que você possui com relação às perspectivas da utilização do sorgo como alimento humano? E quais são os maiores desafios para que isso possa crescer e se expandir? Essa é a primeira pergunta, Lucas.
So, ok, vou passar para ele.
Tá.
So, Nate, the Marcelo asks, what is your feedback about the implementation of sorghum and the growth of the alimentation industry around sorghum, not only in the United States, but around the rest of the globe?
Right, that's a great question. It's one I addressed just a little bit ago. You may have missed it. In short, and I'm happy to give you a longer answer later. When we do markets research on the traits that sorghum represents, the gluten-free, non-GMO, healthy food, sustainable, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, we're seeing growth for those markets in the millions, billions of dollars sometimes, with compound annual growth rates in the double digits. What I'm more interested in this session, Marcelo, as you're one of our esteemed panelists, I would love if you would share a little bit about yourself and what you're doing there in Brazil, and then we'll be ready to tee up questions, from myself, have a little conversation, and then questions from the audience as well. Is that all right?
All right, very much thanks, Nate.
Mhm.
Então, Marcelo, ele fala que o crescimento, como ele tinha comentado mais cedo, está se expandindo, segue se expandindo, que ele comentou antes dos últimos 5, 10 anos, e que o mercado principal que atinge a produção do sorgo é esse mercado de comida sem glúten, de comida saudável, etc. Mas que o que ele está mais interessado nesse momento é que você se introduza para os espectadores, já que você é um estimado aqui entre eles, e que mais tarde ele pode responder melhor essa pergunta diretamente contigo.
Ok. E com relação ao Brasil, Nate, só para encerrar minha última pergunta com o Nate, gostaria de saber os contatos, né, do Brasil, como está o avanço aqui na América Latina, até porque o Brasil é considerado um dos celeiros do mundo na produção de alimentos. E um grande desafio é, segundo as pesquisas, alimentar quase 10 bilhões de pessoas com relação aí à população mundial. E produzir alimentos, né? Essas iniciativas alimentares são muito importantes e muito bem-vindas aqui no Brasil. E nós, como jornalistas, que temos uma rede de comunicação com revistas, jornais e a TV digital, temos o grande interesse em abraçar esse projeto e acreditamos que vai atender a demanda de muitos milhares de produtores pequenos aqui no Brasil, Lucas.
Tudo bem, vou passar para ele. So, Nate, Marcelo is one of the publishers around Revista Agrícola, one of the main magazines here in Brazil, around focused primarily on impacting the smaller farms up in here, which is one of the biggest barns around the globe is here in Brazil. And he asks, I'm sorry. Marcelo, pode repetir para mim, por gentileza?
Vamos lá.
A pergunta.
Lucas, o Brasil enxerga hoje, como um celeiro do mundo, que existe uma necessidade grande de alimentar bilhões de pessoas no mundo. Segundo pesquisas, nós teremos aí quase 10 bilhões de pessoas no mundo até 2050. E a questão da cadeia alimentar é muito importante para os brasileiros. E o sorgo surge como uma grande opção, além de ser uma rotação de cultura para preservar a questão do solo, é uma grande opção também de rentabilidade, correto? E nós aqui no Brasil, como responsáveis por uma rede de comunicação com jornais, revistas, temos o grande interesse em abraçar essa causa e difundir isso por todo o Brasil.
Okay. So what Marcelo says is that we have the ability to diffuse, to propagate through social media, through magazines, through journals, and through television even. We can propagate the sorghum industry here in Brazil, here in South America as a whole. And since we are one of the biggest food producers around the globe, we have this commitment against starving, against world hunger. And he asks, what is your perspective to come into Brazil to propagate sorghum around in here?
That's a great question. Marcelo, let's talk a little bit more about that later, if we can stay with the panel for now, but absolutely, that's something we'll talk about because we're preparing for that trip actually right now. So thank you very much. Levi, I think Levi might be having some connectivity issues. I see he keeps joining and then jumping off, but Levi, are you available for an introduction?
Marcelo, rapidinho. Ele
Oi?
comenta que planeja falar disso um pouco mais tarde, porque agora ele pretende seguir justamente essa agenda e disse que já está se preparando para a viagem que ele vai fazer aqui.
Ok, thank you.
Obrigado. And Lucas, thank you very much for your translation services. English is kind of a lingua franca, and we're very blessed with that. I'm not as fluent in other languages such as Portuguese as I should be. Levi, are you available? I see he's in here. Okay, well, let's just start on some questions for the panel. And Levi, are you unmuted now? Can you speak for us?
Deixa o Lucas estar aqui.
Mr. Chicombe? Okay, well, let's just go ahead and start with some questions for the panelists. And Levi, when you're able to join us, just go ahead and raise your hand and we'll stop so you can make an introduction. I'm going to ask, here's the format. I'll ask a question. And I would like if each of you would answer in the same order that we made introductions. So Crystal and Dr. Diallo, and then Marcelo, and then eventually Levi if available. So here's my first question for you. Given the regions that you're in, different topographies, different markets in general, within not just the sorghum and millet space, but agriculture in general, and given the context of our conversation today, what are the biggest challenges that you see for our farmers in terms of mechanization, adoption, etc.?
I would say in my area, it would definitely be the comfort of introducing equipment. So most farmers are accustomed doing things a particular way. So breaking habits and changing from doing things with manual labor or basic tools into adding equipment to automate seems like the big scary monster. Like, what is this thing? Like, their skill is making their product, creating their good, seeing about their land. That's their skill. They don't seem very bothered into doing something different, stepping into the unknown in terms of adding equipment. And because they don't know about it and they are unaware to some extent, it's challenging to teach them the benefits of doing it. What rivals that, the other thing with the challenges that our farmers face is surplus, overproducing and underproducing. The conversation between the person who's growing products in the north and the person who's growing products in the south. They may be producing the same thing in the same quantities, but there's no conversation being had. So we're overproducing tomatoes and underproducing limes. because there isn't any conversation, there isn't real data for people to know what is being done, what is not being done, how to be done. And then there's another issue when it comes to understanding export requirements, because now we have persons trying to export, and then they may not understand the requirements in terms of the type of inputs needed for their soil. In terms of how they need to grow their product, the type of pesticides to use, the type of fertilizers to use and not use. And they'll think that, okay, I'll grow all these tomatoes and I'll export it, not knowing there's export requirements like X, Y, and Z. We have a lot of little problems. A lot of little problems that become big problems.
Thank you, Crystal. Dr. Diallo, same question to you. What are the biggest challenges you see in West Africa, around these the needs for mechanization, adoption, etc., for your farmers in particular?
Yeah, I will start just echoing what she was saying. Like, I think we having the same problem in the beginning. A little problem can become a big problem in order to operationalize, to do the operationalization on that. But I was saying that in the beginning, like the way we produce need to change because it's too hard. In order to have a big farm, the way we produce need to change, need to have help from mechanization. Let's say you sowing, having animal traction helping you during the sowing process. Okay, land preparation, maybe you will have 2 to 4 wheels tractor to do that. So this is it for millet and sorghum. Even the thinning process, you have to do it by hand. You have to go there, and then the harvest process, the conservation process, the post-harvest management, everything is hard. So there is no way, even though the consumption is here, whether the market is here, people want to consume that. More and more people want to consume that. The market cannot drive it because sometimes you don't have the material available because the production is not there. So this have to start from helping people to produce in a less labor manner, and then harvesting. See, the guy from Ethiopia or Kenya was saying that you have to put it in your bag and then move it from a small farm. You need to do 1 week in order to be able to harvest that. It's painful, really. So this type of mechanism. So if you go so and so, I was thinking about this book for them. The color you were talking to, how to decorticate this is not easy also. So everything she did, the first panelist, I have to add this. So all this sometimes I was telling you, when you come to Senegal, sometimes step by step, in every step, if you jump to the step, you will find a small thing can be a big thing. So small thing can be a big thing, and so that's why to do a planification and doing this process is very difficult. So this is to add to what she said that I echo totally.
Right. Thank you, and I'll never forget what you told me when you picked me up from the airport. You said, "Welcome to Africa, a challenge in every step." Or as my friends in East Africa would say, TIA, this is Africa. Absolutely. Thank you very much. Marcelo, same question for you. The farmers that you're working with in South America, what are their biggest challenges you're seeing in regard to adoption of these kinds of technologies? And what are their biggest challenges in general that you're seeing?
Marcelo?
Olá. Ô, Nate, aqui, falar para ele, respondendo a pergunta do Nate, né, com relação as dificuldades que os produtores encontram é justamente as opções aqui de comercialização do sorgo, é uma das dificuldades, né, que se encontra. E com relação à questão da mecanização, que está muito avançada em soja, milho e outras culturas, uma das dificuldades são que os pequenos produtores muitas vezes não têm acesso a tanta tecnologia devido ao alto custo de produção. Mas os que utilizam, né, os que fazem a utilização do sorgo com relação à rotação de cultura, preservando o solo, esse já tem esses equipamentos e acaba usando, como hoje a tecnologia de drone, que está muito avançada, o plantio direto, que eles já usam bastante aqui. Mas eu acredito que uma das maiores dificuldades que eles encontram aqui seria a questão da comercialização. Embora alguns pequenos grupos tenham se organizado já em regiões e começado a se unir e poder trocar experiências, né, sobre um avanço aí da cultura do sorgo. Eu estou falando isso numa pequena região aqui do estado de São Paulo, onde nós estamos localizados, e que talvez essa seria aí uma das dificuldades que o pessoal tem encontrado.
Tudo bem, vou passar aqui para ele. So, Nate, very great question. Thanks for asking. One of the biggest concerns we have here in Brazil is that the monoculture around soy and corn have the monopoly around the machinery needed, the mechanization, the high-tech mechanization. And it's very difficult to implement other types of agriculture in here. So for instance, some farmers already use sorghum as a rotative culture, as a way of preserving the soil, but it's still very new, brand new, and it's tough to bring this kind of innovation here in Brazil and to convince the market to accept it. So that is one of the biggest issues we have.
That leads me right into our next question. Thank you very much. I have been speaking with Levi Chikambe, by the way. He's having connectivity issues. He will be able to jump in when he can. Although we've had a similar perspective with Alcana. Levi and his company Cropsoco are also aggregators working directly with farmers for fair prices. Sorry, too many things going on here at once. You can't see where I'm at, by the way, but I've got like 3 screens between my phone, my iPad, the computer, and I'm trying to do all this stuff. Anyway, so sorry for that. But at any rate, let's go into the next question, because as a farm kid, and I know there's at least one Nebraska farmer, if not a couple on this call as well, they would agree with you, as will I, that farmers like to stick with what they know. And so doing new things can be very difficult sometimes. Not necessarily because the new thing might make their jobs easier, but because it's hard to trust what's new when you know what you know works, right? So although we're having a conversation about mechanization in particular and machines and all these things, I think we can't ignore the human element. And so my next question for all of you, again, same order as we did before, is if we had the best machine, the best solutions today, right now, what are your recommendations for strategies to adopt to increase adoption amongst the general average farmer within your country? Does that revolve around governmental-led programs? Is it a private sector? What does the training look like? What does it look like, in your opinion, to encourage widespread adoption of new technologies in these fields?
I believe it would be something more of a joint effort. It would be more of a joint effort. Community will drive it further, but it would be more of a joint effort. It would be an educational pilgrimage where, I'm not sure if you are familiar with the term of community centers where you could have the equipment there set up for a week, 2 weeks, where the actual user could come in, see the equipment, touch the equipment, use the equipment, understand the equipment, and become more familiar. So there's a greater familiarity with it. So they could be like, I went to this community center and I used this treasure and it worked like this. When the person came to me and she spoke with me and she explained this, I thought she was talking nonsense, but I saw it for myself. And in societies like mine, word of mouth is everything. You could try and sell whole day, however, word of mouth is everything. And the farming community is a close-knit community. Even though they don't speak to each other, word will reach that there is a product that could do this, that could mitigate the amount of work that we do. And farmer A used it, farmer J used it, farmer D used it. Why am I not using this as well? So if there could be something of an educational pilgrimage area to area in common buildings like community centers where they could touch, feel, smell, taste the product, the process, use it, see it, and see the value of it, I believe it would be easier adopted. And of course, incentivize the purchase of it. Make it easier. We have a couple good grants here, good loans here dedicated towards farmers, so if the sellers could partner with the governing bodies that do these things to create awareness from that perspective as well, I think it could work. I really think something like that could do well, go out and meet them to some extent.
Very good. Thank you,
Passing the
Crystal.
baton.
Thank you, Crystal. I am always a big fan of those community-driven solutions. Dr. Diallo, same question for you in Senegal.
Yeah, I will have like the same kind of answer. Incentive. You have to put incentive on it. You have to raise awareness about that, because this material need to be adopted. So you need to demonstrate the adaptability of this material with the farmers. So you have to do it with them. Then, if they agree on using this material, and this is the relation from the first question. Farmers don't want to change because they are not gamblers. They don't want to do gamble on there because they have, in our case, they have only one activity in the year, okay, during the rainy season. So they don't want to put gamble on it. So you have to demonstrate that what you are proposing is working in order for them to change what they had before, even though they are losing. So just not coming here saying, okay, if you do this, you will increase your yield. Yes, I'm going to do it, but at the same time, I'm doing what I'm used to do because I don't want to play this game. You have to demonstrate that. This is really important for them. Okay, so if you do all these activities, education purpose, raising awareness, they know the machine, they touch it, they tried it, it is working, then it's going to be the bottom-up strategy. Okay, they will ask for that, and then the government, in our case, will comply on that. So this is the best way. Having this material have to be adapted in the area with them, working with them, doing all the process, and then it's going to be the communication aspect will be within their community. If something good is coming, they rely on it. So it's going to be very easy to do the scaling up. Then in our country we have government subsidies coming. Then they're going to ask for that, and the government will comply on that. It's going to be, the best way of doing this. So with them first, then for them. You do with them and then for them. This is
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you, Dr. Diallo. I think you're spot on. Marcelo, same question for you, and Lucas, I'll repeat it so you can translate. What strategies for adoption of new technologies do you think would be best for your farmers in Brazil?
Ok, thanks, Nate. Então, Marcelo, resumindo a pergunta, quais estratégias para a adoção de novas tecnologias você acha que seria mais eficiente aqui no Brasil? Não te ouço, Marcelo.
Ok. Olá, respondendo, Lucas. Ok agora?
Sim, sim, pode ir.
Olá, Neide. Eu acredito que no Brasil, o governo, existe programas voltados para a agricultura familiar. São projetos de incentivo para que os produtores tenham acesso às tecnologias, aos maquinários, de uma forma em geral. Eu acredito que uma grande estratégia que seria muito eficaz aqui seria a organização de pequenos produtores para receber essas informações. Aqui no Brasil, como em todo o país, se busca muito a lucratividade. E muitas vezes a cultura do sorgo acaba ficando de lado por falta de conhecimento da questão de lucratividade e até mesmo de uma questão de saúde maior para o solo. Então, eu acredito que organização de projetos que reúna esses produtores e apresentem para eles as vantagens e a lucratividade e o bem que eles possam ter com a utilização do sorgo, do milheto também, seria de uma estratégia que eu acredito que seria muito eficaz. Ficou longo, Lucas?
Não, não, imagina. Vou passar para ele, tá bom?
Ah.
So, Nate, here in Brazil, we have government sponsorship for small producers to make agro-family culture. So based around that, one of the main strategies we can adopt is to organize and distribute information so that small farmers can discover other kinds of agriculture and other innovations that can come to the field, since one of the biggest issues we have right now is the access to information, the distribution of information, not only around sorghum, but around millet too.
Excellent. Thank you very much. I think this, and Elkanah, I know you had your hand up, and I want to speak with you here in a moment, but you did make a really good point. Step by step for farmers to take up mechanization, train aggregators, let them put farmers in groups, train them and make the machines available. I think those are really good points. And what I want to do, though, before we get too far into that, I want to talk a moment about a program here at the University of Nebraska called TAPS, which is called the Testing Ag Performance Solutions. Now, unfortunately, we don't have anyone from the TAPS program on this call right now, but I do see Tracy Zink on the call. And Tracy's a former board member of mine with Nebraska Sorghum, and she's participated in TAPS quite a bit over the years. Tracy, are you comfortable, if you're still on and listening, are you comfortable talking for a moment about TAPS and how that training opportunity helps farmers here in Nebraska try new things?
Hey.
I'm waiting on, no, hang on, waiting on Tracy Zink. But I'm putting her on the spot. And if Tracy, if you're not prepared to speak to that, I understand. It's no problem.
In that, I can speak maybe
Okay.
a couple of minutes if she's not there.
Perfect. Thank you, Dr. This is Dr. Chittaranjan Ray, by the way. I like to consider Dr. Ray a friend. I've actually been to his hometown or home region there in India. He's very well respected, director of the Nebraska Water Center. So yes, sir, Dr. Ray, please.
Yeah, so good morning, evening, everybody. So this TAPS project, what Ned mentioned, it is called Testing Agricultural Performance Solutions. It's basically peer learning, farmer to farmer learning. So it's not as many people think, in the coffee shops in America or other places, some farmer might say neighbor that, oh, I got so many tons per hectare or so many bushels per acre. That's typical yield conversation at breakfast. But that's not necessarily the right profitability or a return on investment for a farmer. So this friendly competition basically allows producers. It can be a regular farmer, it could be somebody who's learning farming, because the right now it's all done through our one of our research centers in the south central part of the state. Each competitor is given 3 pieces of land, not very big, and they have few crops, either corn, soybean. This year sorghum is also part of that. They have to make decisions on their inputs, that how many pounds or kilograms per hectare of nitrogen fertilizer they have to use if they are using corn. What will be the irrigation? What number of plants they need to plant per acre or per hectare? Varieties, then their insurance for crop protection, then also marketing. All these things have to be done. Marketing the commodity prices when they want to sell, what the price they are locking in. So all these decisions are made, but at the end of the competition, prizes are given to the person having the highest return on the investment. Also, sometimes they recognize the people or a person getting the highest yield, but that does not typically translate to highest return on the investment. So what it boils down to that you can have the highest amount of yield, but your input is so high that your return on investment is not ideal. So you have to put a lot of nitrogen fertilizer, or you have to put a lot of water, all those things. So this is what it's going on for about 5-6 years. It is kind of gaining popularity in other states right now, in the mid-plains area here, Colorado, Oklahoma, Kansas, and what I hear now that a few other states in US, Florida, Minnesota, they are also trying to do this. So maybe briefly here, it's not always the highest yield, it's always a return on the investment.
Thank you, Dr. Ray. What I love about that is the TAPS program is farmer-led. It's peer-to-peer, just like you mentioned. It's an opportunity for them to try new things without having the risk that they would have on their own farm. And the reason I thought of it, the reason I bring it up is because I think that Crystal, Marcelo, Dr. Diallo, I think your comments in regard to adoption needing to be led by farmers with the chance for them to touch, feel, take the risk out of it for them is the right approach. Now, that said, we have about 23 minutes left in this segment, and that's all of the questions I've prepared for our panelists. So I'd like to open it up to everyone else. So if you'd like to ask a question for the panelists, whether that's all the panelists or one in particular, either put it in the chat or go ahead and raise your hand. Now, Kana, you've had your hand up for a while, so if you'd like to kick us off, you're welcome to do so.
I would hello. I would want to just comment on the last question. Mine is a comment. Am I allowed to proceed with my comment on the last question?
Please do. Yeah, please do.
Okay. The biggest there's something that I realized or I experienced with my farmers, which I would want to share with the panel. The last 2 seasons, we were able to do around 4 tracks for the short rains, and for the long rains, also 4 tracks to the EABL. The thing about farmers taking up new technology has 2 things: about availability of the technology and the pricing of the technology. Because I came across some thresher that is from Brazil, and we lease some thresher that works in rice. It also works well in sorghum. So when I lease this truck, these machines to my farmers, now the pricing is also the farmers are very sensitive on the pricing of the technology. because you find that maybe the first season we did it at 2 shillings per 2 shillings per kilo. And then last season, because of the increase in the fuel cost, it went to 5 shillings. So the farmers, as we also discussed the mechanization of these smallholder farmers, we should also look at the price and the availability of these threshers. I'm aware that China has some threshers, but the cost of the initial cost of the equipment. Actually, my recommendation, in line to the question you had asked, is these farmers should be put in groups, because it's not like the farmers do not know what they are doing right now. They should be put into groups. Then one person who's currently an aggregator. The challenge that we have with aggregators is that they come when the farmers have produced the sorghum, and their work is just to buy and deliver to the market, but they do not help the farmer in the production. So some of the challenges they might not be able to highlight. So if these farmers are in groups, they are able to pick up the technology faster, and it is also easier for them to own the technology, maybe to own the thresher, because if they can be able to jointly own the thresher and be able to share the cost of owning the thresher over a time. But the technology has to be available. The technology has to be cheap, because you can thresh at 5 shillings, which is very expensive for the farmer, and they will not take up that technology. Thank you.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And that's one of the models that I'm going to talk about in our final session. I'm sorry, I've got yard irrigation. You can hear it's hitting one of my gutters. So I'm sorry for the noise. It's an automated system, and I didn't realize I had it set to go today. So apologies for that. Anyway, no, you're absolutely right. That's something that we'll talk about later too, is you know, how best can it be owned, manufactured affordably? That's certainly something we need to talk about, and we will. Thank you very much. Rono, you had a hand up. Are you still there? Is your hand still up? Do you have a question for the group?
Okay, thank you so much,
Rono, you're breaking up. You're breaking up just a little bit. Not really, not well. If we're not unable to hear from you, can you put it in the chat and I'll ask it on your behalf? Is that all right? You know, one common problem we have in agricultural country around the world, by the way, is that of internet connectivity. This is a big problem, obviously, in various parts of Africa. It's also true in India, other parts of Asia, but even here in Nebraska, you know, there are parts of the state where I can't use my cell phone very well, right? So this is another issue that's not necessarily small scale mechanization, but certainly affects our access to markets, etc. While we're waiting for Rono's question, and Rono, again, put it in the chat and I'll ask it on your behalf, if that's okay. I saw that Leonard Manyundo, who we've done some work with also, he's working with youth in Kenya. We have a lot of folks from Kenya here. We must be doing a good job there. He had a few comments or questions. Do you have a question that you'd like to share or a comment you'd like to share with the panel? Mr. Manyundo?
I'm gonna move, so I don't think if I'll be in position to talk because of noise. I'm only using my earphones.
We can hear you just fine. Yep, we can hear you just fine. Go ahead.
All right. Oh, thank you. Let me introduce myself. I'm Mujendo Leonard. I'm in Kenya, that is in Africa. So we work with youth and also other farmers. So I wanted to know, because you're talking about mechanization, the problem has been that the value addition mechanics, like the threshers and all that we need, has been a challenge in Kenya. If there is anybody who can come on board, and then we can see how we can help farmers and maybe introduce new products into the market, I'll be really happy. Another comment is that I know I've had some of our panelists talking about issue about fertility of the soil health as a major challenge. And also they've talked about adoption of innovation as a big challenge. It is true, even as we are speaking, because I'm introducing the issue about microbial technology. A lot of farmers are still questioning, but a number of those who have been able to do it practical, they've gone ahead to do it and they are seeing results. So it's a slow learning process. Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions for the group? We've got about 15 minutes before this session ends. So you've got Crystal, Marcelo, Dr. Diallo, I think is still on. I think he might have jumped off. No, he's still there. Okay. Other questions for the group? Now is your chance. Here's a question, maybe. Okay, please comment. Elkanah says, please comment on the price comparison, different sorghum markets. I also recommend farmers to form SACCOs to afford the equipments. In India, we would call SACCO, we'd call that farmer producer organization. Here in the US, we'd call it maybe a cooperative system. Yeah. And he said he's come across some threshers from China, which I think he mentioned already also. Okay, great. Thank you very much, Elkanah. Questions for the panel? Okay, seeing none, panelists, do you have anything you'd like to add before we let you go? You're muted, Crystal. I see your lips moving, but I don't.
Hello, Nate. Maybe I'm going first because
Sure.
I'm ahead, traveling. So what I'm gonna say is really I salute you doing this because really is really important in order to address that. These cereals need to be well understood what they are giving in terms of nutrition aspect is huge. People should know millet and sorghum well, and in order to put them in the food system, I think they can contribute on reducing really what is happening right now. People are being sick because the way they are eating food is not normal. We need to change that. The way to change that is using cereals that giving you everything you need in order to be in a safer position. Having health, raising your kids.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Diallo. I think we might have.
This
There you
is
are.
really important. For me, is I'm working in a center where every innovation we need to spread it in West and Central Africa. So this is a very big entry point in order to develop technology. So this is what I wanted to say. We will continue this discussion. I'm hoping one day we will talk and then having this millet and sorghum cooker in order to be able to cook it better than cooking rice. So this is my main hope. This is what I wanted to have in 5 years' time or 3 years' times. So thank you. With that, I have to apologize because I'm in the road, but thank you very much, Nate, for all your effort in putting people together in order to tackle these small and big things at the same time. Thank you.
Dr. Diallo, thank you. Before you go, we did have a question from Elkanah that we didn't address. If everyone could answer that as well. And his question is just a comment on prices comparison for different sorghum markets. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that before you jump off. And thank you for being with us.
Yeah, to answer this question, in our case, Millet and sorghum production is going directly to our food system. Generally, we put it in the market, so it's depending on really the having this material available. If they're available, and then you buy it. If not, you just wait to have it. That's it. There is no regulation on the market, really, because it's our social aspect. And I think in West Africa also, except the fact that sometimes they use it for brewing, what the guy was saying, and then depending on if there is maize available for the poultry. If not, then sorghum grain can increase because the industry on poultry, demanded it. So this is happening in a small timing during the year, but this is not a big issue for us, really. We need to produce more, and then we can go through this, and then having we can tackle then the marketability of it. So if it is available, we use it. So I don't have really many issue. We don't have many issue on pricing in this. If it is available, we use it. That's it.
Okay,
I
great.
don't know if this is answering the question. In my area, this is how things works. See, I'm saying the best what that I can.
Thank you, Dr. Diallo. And just one note here. Anup says directly to you, sir, before you jump off, that they use an electric rice cooker, the same proportion of water and rice for his sorghum, and it comes out great. Promotes it as such. And I would tell you, we do the same thing at home. Maybe 3 cups of water to 1 cup of sorghum is how we do it. It's a question of making that rice cooker technology available around the world and affordable in homes. So absolutely, thank you. Levi was able to join us, and before I have final comments from Crystal and Marcelo, Levi, while we've got you, if you can make an introduction, talk a little bit about what you do and some of the challenges that you're seeing in East Africa for your farmers, we would really appreciate that.
Hi, Nate.
Hi, Levi.
Finally. Sorry for small inconveniences, but pleasure to be part of this. My name is Levi Chikombe. I'm the CEO and founder of Cropsoko Technologies Limited. I have a background in economics, but I'm very passionate about smallholder farming. And we set up Cropsoko basically to support smallholder farmers to access markets for different crops. So sorghum is one of the crops that we are contracting our farmers to do, majorly because it's a hardy crop, and some of the areas we are working with farmers are semi-arid. So then they are able to get a crop to that earns them an income to sustain their livelihood. I've been listening through the panel discussion, and I think most of the challenges farmers are facing elsewhere in West Africa, in Brazil, they're almost similar to what we are facing here in Kenya. But just to add, one challenge that I've noticed the farmers is lack of know-how in terms of crop management, in as much as the other challenges in terms of access to technology, access to information, access to finance, access to quality farm inputs. There are just too many. But I think we also need to put more emphasis in terms of capacity building these farmers to be able to own some of these challenges and be able to solve locally wherever they face these challenges. Because in as much as we, with the partners, the government institutions, non-government institutions are working towards empowering these farmers, I believe unless the farmers themselves are able to embrace some of these challenges, then we may not be able to really impact them the way we want them to be impacted. So as Cropsoko, we've been participating in the entire value chain, trying to make sure that farmers are able to access most of these services that I've just mentioned. And when it comes to technology, I would say most farmers are not able to access some of these technology, especially for the smallholder farmers, because of the cost implication. If we were to talk about maybe land preparation, if we were to start from land preparation, very few farmers have access to or can be able to own tractors, for example. So unless they are organized in groups, unless there's a financing model that appeals to them to access such kind of technology, then they are left out. In Kenya, I would say probably about 60% of smallholder farmers in Kenya are still using hose to till their land, or they're using hand manual labor to manage their crops. So if we come up with very innovative ways of making sure farmers are able to access some of this technology, I think then most of them will be motivated to increase their acreage and do production a better way. If we look at my colleague here mentioned something about threshing, and I totally agree with him. Threshing, especially not just for sorghum, but almost all the cereals we are dealing with, is a major issue. And unless the private sector leads the way in terms of developing maybe smaller version of threshers, solar-powered, easy-to-move threshers, then we will still leave out most of these farmers in terms of accessibility. Then in terms of post-harvest value addition, storage, those are things that still our farmers here in Kenya still struggling with, and they contribute to about 30% in terms of losses because they don't have technical capacity to either store their produce very well or add value to the crops that they have. As my colleague here mentioned, if I were to pick a value chain like sorghum, see, most of the value chain actors are all looking at East African brewery to supply. And I think that's not the best approach, because if these farmers were able to value add, if they had capacity and know-how or access to technology, they will do better and they will earn higher margins as compared to what they're currently earning. So just to summarize, Nate, that is at least what I can imagine, unless there are specific questions.
Very good. Thank you, Levi. And again, I had the pleasure of visiting with Levi and his team in Kenya just a few months ago, doing farm visits. Levi, do me a favor, tell Anne Ruth, quote, "Oh, wow." That is an inside joke, but she'll appreciate it.
Yeah, sure.
All right. We have just a couple of minutes left. And so I thank you again, Levi, for being able to join us. I hope you can stick around throughout the day as much as you can for our last few sessions. But I want to give the floor to both Crystal as well as Marcelo for closing thoughts. Ladies first again, Crystal, closing thoughts on your behalf. After Crystal and Marcelo's comments, we'll take about a 10-minute break or so.
Okay, closing, so it is interesting to realize that we share the same problems. I had an idea, but it's still interesting to hear it coming from the persons in the actual areas that we actually have the same issues with adopting technologies and practices, and the same issues with farmers and products and knowledge, conversation, mechanization. It really is interesting. And I'm wondering why. Why do we still have the same problems? Why do we all have the same problems? And even we have the same problems, and oddly enough, we have the same solutions. Same problems, same solutions, but for some reason, it isn't being adopted. The solution to the problem isn't being adopted, but we still have the same problems. Like, if it's common knowledge what the problems are and what the solutions are, why aren't we adopting them? That kind of boggled me a bit. And something else. when we were talking about, like solutions like the TAP program and things, and it mentioned cooperatives. I'm a big cooperative fan. My degree is in cooperatives. Pretty useless degree for me. Now I don't use it in the business, but I still use the cooperative principles. And I do think, forming several farming cooperatives around the initiative could be a good idea. It could be a way to easier adopt, because with the cooperative principle, everyone benefits, the whole benefits, and people generally, they tend to be more motivated when they know they could benefit at the end. So those are my closing thoughts. Militant program was grown in TNT division.
Thank you, Crystal. I agree. I'm sorry, just before you finish there, I thought you were done for a second. I agree. That's part of the value of having these conversations, whether it's in this format or even when I travel, is that you find that we always have more in common than we have that separates us. And, to your point, if we have these common problems which may share some common solutions, why aren't they being implemented? And I think from my perspective, it's simply because we're only learning that they're common problems, right? It takes groups like ours to come together to begin to have these conversations. And even then, we're a relatively small group when you think about the 9 billion people on the planet, right? But an avalanche starts with pebbles, and we have to start somewhere. Sorry, you had one more thought there before we go to Marcelo.
Oh no, I was just reading a comment that they were saying that they don't know that it's grown. It's not something that's widely grown. I know we do like forms of millets, but sorghum specifically isn't really grown here. We are trying to break into that now. We've started with raising awareness.
Speaking of, I did just have another conversation, and I saw Bhavon Charles is on this call, but a mutual friend of Bhavon's and I in Grenada is wanting to make whiskey out of sorghum. They're currently not growing sorghum in Grenada, but we've started a conversation about what some field trials might look like at high altitude in that country. So another place where we're potentially working. So awesome. Thank you, Crystal. And Marcelo, your closing thoughts, please, before we take a 10-minute break. And I'm so glad to have you on here.
Alô, Marcelo? Se encontra?
Ô,
Olá, tudo bem? Comentando brevemente sobre o que foi dito agora de pouco, os participantes de Quênia, sobretudo, se mostraram muito preocupados com a acessibilidade que os debulhadores, tanto de arroz quanto do sorgo, possuem no momento. Eles queriam que você comentasse um pouco mais sobre isso.
sim.
E também sobre a
Aqui-
acessibilidade de equipamentos de cozinha, como eu tinha te falado ali por mensagem.
Tá. Eu acredito que esse desafio, Nate, e a todos os convidados, é uma realidade a nível mundial, e uma das alternativas que se encontram, que é muito utilizado aqui no Brasil, são as cooperativas, né? Através das cooperativas que se unem para que eles possam ter acesso aos maquinários. Como eu disse, o governo brasileiro tem feito ações através de um programa que é o Agricultura Familiar, o que acaba facilitando a aquisição desses maquinários que são utilizados hoje para que os pequenos possam ter aí acesso. Até porque os pequenos que necessitam desse apoio, né? Então, aqui na nossa realidade, onde a gente vive aqui, na região do Vale do Paranapanema, o acesso a esses maquinários muitas vezes se dá através da união, né, de programas governamentais que acabam concedendo um maior acesso para esses maquinários, os que existem, né? Ele falou sobre o descascador, né? Como foi citado ali, Lucas.
Sim.
Mas eu acredito que um grande desafio hoje que nós encontramos aqui seria a união de pequenos produtores e a formação para entender o quanto essa cultura pode ser importante, né? tendo em vista o que a gente enfrenta hoje, as questões climáticas, né, as questões de falta de chuva que a gente tem enfrentado, uma das soluções é a informação para que esses produtores possam ter uma conscientização sobre a opção do sorgo, né, para poder colocar em prática nas suas propriedades. Com relação aos preços, né, das commodities, vamos dizer assim, que caíram bastante, o milho, a soja, que é muito utilizado aqui, muitas vezes os produtores acabam ficando sem opção para poder investir em outras opções de cultura. E aí passa pela questão da mecanização, sobre a estrutura que precisa ter para poder investir numa determinada cultura e opção. Então, eu acredito que uma conscientização, a falta de informação, muitas vezes, talvez seja um gargalo que existe para que possa ter uma maior união, né? E dentro desses programas que são oferecidos pelo governo, essa união aí desses pequenos produtores possam resultar em uma facilidade maior para que eles possam ter êxito. Isso é uma realidade que eu estou dizendo aqui de uma determinada região aqui do Brasil, no estado de São Paulo.
Não, excelente, Marcelo. So what Marcelo says about the threshers accessibility problem is that in our reality here in Brazil, what we got are cooperatives and governmental projects that lend the machinery, the threshers, to small producers, to small farmers in specific places, which are these cooperatives. And this is one of the strategies we can adopt in order to come around this problem. We can get farmers together, get small producers together, and make a common interest point in which they can access the machinery, in which they can access the threshers and other machineries needed. Not only that, but here in Brazil, although the thresher, the accessibility is not so much of an issue, what is indeed an issue is the information coming around to the producers, the information about other cultures, about soil preparation, about for instance, for example, sorghum methods to prepare the sorghum, to prepare for sorghum plantation. And this is one of our biggest issues. And one of the solutions we can come around to the threshers problem is exactly the organization, the togetherness, and the sharement.
That's great. Thank you, Marcelo. And the good news, as many of you know on the call, is that in many parts of the world, there are organizations where these farmers have come together. Like I said, in India, we call them farmer producer organizations, of which there are tens of thousands. Of course, in the U.S., they're cooperatives. Other parts of the world, they're what we call SACCOs. We decided in East Africa. And so the question is then, how do we engage them while also providing opportunities for local manufacturing to keep costs down? And again, these are things that we'll talk about in the coming sessions as well. Now, all that said, and Lucas, again, thank you so much for your service in providing translation. I'm sure when I'm in Brazil here in July, you'll be doing it there again, but in person. So thank you for that. Now, we're running about 8 minutes behind, but what I would like to do is to take a 10-minute break, no more than 10 minutes. And then when we come back, we're going to hear from two of the folks that are working in irrigation, or have worked in irrigation, I should say, at the Dougherty Water for Food Global Institute. We have Dr. Ankit Chandra and Anthony Delaney. We met Anthony a bit earlier in his comment in our first session. But we're going to hear from them. They have a brief presentation. It is set up for screen share, so you gentlemen can go ahead and share your screen whenever you'd like. But here at, let's say 11:50 Central Time, so 10, 11 minutes from now, we'll go ahead and resume. Half an hour presentation from them, followed by your questions. I will do my best to moderate and to speak less. So thank you.